mind if I do that as well. So first of all, thank you very much that I can be here because it's my first conference ever actually. So I'm really glad I can be here with you today. Can you see the screen properly if everything is all right? Okay, so the topic I will start because we don't have much time, but the topic of of today's presentation is Border of Humanity, which is experience of female migrants, refugees and asylum seekers trying to reach the European Union through the Polish-Belarusian border, but also, as I mentioned at the beginning, what militarized response to humanitarian crisis mean for women actually. Just to start, if you can just go to the second slide, because it's really important to mention that at the beginning. I submitted my abstract just before Russian invasion started in Ukraine. And even though I would love to speak about that more, it's not the topic of my today's presentation, but it's important to mention that all the horrible things are happening currently in this area of Europe. So as you can see, we're talking today about the border of Belarus and Poland, but Ukraine is just behind the border. That's what's happening there right now. But we will be talking about experiences of refugees, asylum seekers, migrants, and what has been happening for the last 10 months since last summer. So we can go to the next slide. I'll give first a quick introduction onto what happened and why actually we are where we are. So in May, you can go to the next slide. There are just a couple of notions I will explain anyway. But in May 2021, the European Union imposed sanctions on Belarus actually, because what happened, Belarusian authorities forced a commercial plane to land in Minsk, and they arrested two well-known opposition activists. That's what happened. That's when Lukashenko, which is Belarusian president, decided that he's not going to stop or prevent any more so-called illegal immigration to the European Union anymore. And according to Grupa Granica is a big movement of NGOs in Poland who help refugees and asylum seekers. They wrote a very good report. I'm happy to then later send the link in the chat on the situation at the border. What we can read in the report is that the Belarusian authorities have acted like a well-organized network of smugglers, which is actually true with what we know from interviews with migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers from Middle Eastern countries. Majority of them are currently from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Learning from their stories, we know that they've been encouraged since summer last year by local travel agents to travel to Belarus on their travel visas, and they were promised that from then they will have an easy access to European Union through the border, Belarus and Polish border. But unfortunately, what they didn't know is that they will be illegally pushed back from one side to another by both sides, by both Belarusian and Polish sides. What is more, Poland introduced a state of emergency at the border, which means that currently it's extended till the end of June. Currently, medics, activists, volunteers, journalists have no access to the area, technically. It is illegal to get there. Therefore, that's why it is so difficult to help people who are stuck between Poland and Belarus, which you need to know it's just basically a forest and swamps. And that's where people have been throughout the whole winter. According to Human Rights Watch, that's the quotation, but I agree with that as well. Belarus is not a safe place, it's not a safe country for migrants and asylum seekers. But Poland, that's what I will add, is a European Union country. So pushbacks, denying access to asylum procedures, separating families or tortures, a serious breach of European Union law, humanitarian law, any kind of law you can basically imagine. if we can just go to the next slide. So that was just a quick introduction into what has been happening in the European Union country in the 21st century right now. But I would like to focus on experiences of women, migrants and refugees and asylum seekers throughout this whole situation. If you can just go to the next slide, it's just a quick quote. But in this presentation, I would like to concentrate on the stories of women who try to reach European Union through this so-called eastern border route. And what I think, we tend to collectively describe groups of people like refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, and it doesn't mean not only in English, but in any other language we speak. And what I like to emphasize, dear friend of mine always emphasize that, and I really like that being a refugee, even migrant or asylum seeker is not who we are, it's what happens to us. We very often forget those human stories, those human beings behind what's happening. Even when we think about Ukraine as well, and yes, specifically talking about Belarus and Poland, people from Middle Eastern countries, women, they are all different stories and different factors that push people to actually look for better future. And here we've got just a quick quote from the head of the Polish Migration Forum, which I think is really important, that a huge percentage of population of migrants are women, but unfortunately, media do not cover many of these stories. Just 2 weeks ago, you can find it online as well. I'm happy to find it later, the link for you. Amnesty International released a report on the situation of refugees and migrants in the refugee centers in Poland, being compared to Guantanamo, unfortunately. But when you go through the report, you can also see many male voices, men voices, not necessarily female. So I just would like to introduce you to a couple of stories of women who tried or who managed to cross the border. Can we go to the next slide, please? First one is Ola Sabah Hamad. She is Iraqi woman, 32-year-old. She was found in the forest at the Polish side of the border in the mid-October by activists from one of the Polish NGOs. She was leading a group of 30 people, actually, among which 16 were children, many of them suffering from hypothermia and experiencing loads of violence from both Belarusian and Polish border guards. Unfortunately, as we know, everyone has got a right to claim asylum, but their applications were not processed until the pressure of media, volunteers and non-governmental organizations. Then it was possible to take all of this big group of people that Ola Sabah Hamad led, to take them to actually the foreigner center, let's say so, closed though, so the conditions were very bad. Today, she's released from the center together with her family, waiting for the outcome of the asylum procedure. And there's a beautiful interview with her in one of the Polish TVs when she's saying that she would love to be a hairdresser. And in the picture, you can see her hairstyle that she did herself. And she told the story that that's her dream and she loves working. And that's why she had to run away from her country as well. Because for women like her, she would not be able to work. Let's go to the next one. This is Marva, and she is from Syria. She's 30 years old. In November 2021, Marva was found in the forest on the Polish side of the border. Her family for years has lived already in Germany. However, because Marva was already an adult, she was not eligible to join them under family reunion provisions. Therefore, she was still in Syria. Marva suffers from epilepsy, and unfortunately, her medications were no longer available in Syria. That's why she decided to actually go and try to cross the border between Belarus and Poland. She was found in November, as I mentioned, 2021 in the forest, half alive in her sleeping bag with an other group of migrants who informed volunteers that just a couple hours before she had an epilepsy attack. That's why they thought that she's acting like that. But unfortunately, she was just in the state of the hypothermia. Fortunately, after 2 months in the hospital, she was released, and just 3 days after, she was able to go to Germany, join her family, as she was granted an international protection in Germany. Third story, it's just the next slide, please. Unfortunately, it's not that happy as two previous ones. Avin was 38-year-old Kurdish woman. She and her family had already been in the forest at the border for a week before volunteers found them. Avin was 24 weeks pregnant, but she lost her pregnancy in the forest at the border. When doctors found her, the temperature of her body was 27 degrees Celsius, which is about 80.6 Fahrenheit. Unfortunately, 2 weeks after, she died in a hospital in Poland, because eventually she was taken to the hospital, but she left behind her husband and 5 children. When you go to the next slide, please. So these were stories of women who were trying to cross the border. Some of them made it, some of them unfortunately didn't. And as I mentioned, I didn't really want to make comparison to what's happening in Ukraine, but just to leave you with few thoughts at the end of this presentation. You can see the first one is from the report on the situation at the border. Throughout 4 months, so from August to October 2021, we were talking about 28,500 attempts to cross the border illegally. That's what border guards officials tweeted. So that was within 4 months. And on your right side, you can see a tweet that I took a screenshot of yesterday, saying that almost 3 million people have crossed the Polish-Ukrainian border since 24th of February, and only 21.4 thousand yesterday. Yesterday, I mean, it was on the 26th, so 2 days ago. Next slide, please. And right now, there's a wall being built at the Polish-Belarusian border. The estimated cost is about 1.5 billion zloty, which is about 300 million pounds. Next one, please. I wanted to talk a bit about recommendations before I submitted my abstract, but I will not really. Well, it's not because I don't have any. I have many. You can find them also online. You can read Human Rights Watch reports, and basically one thing is sure: we should start respecting human rights. That's the first thing first. But I would like to leave you with one thought, which I think is quite important in terms of giving hope as well, or taking governments accountable for what they are doing. We can see what's happening in Ukraine right now, and the response of European Union, especially to the crisis, to the women especially, because that's the biggest group that is now leaving Ukraine. And there's a huge amount of help, which is fantastic. And me being Polish, I know what's happening there because I've been working with the organizations in Poland as well. And there is loads of amount of help. People are so open. So instead of criticizing, I would say if we can do that for one group of people, we are definitely able to do that for everyone, especially when the group is smaller. And yeah, I think I will leave you with that. Thank you. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Maja. That was a terrific paper. Most of